Hi guys, Garage RC here, back with another video. So it's been a while since my last video. I've been very busy with lots of different things. I'll give an update on that in the next video. I really want to get into some building and get back into the mini RC world. So I'm just going to get straight to it. We've got the BMR-X Pro. This came out probably over a year ago now, but I've had it sat on the shelf for quite a while. I think I got it probably back in January time, February time, but here we are anyway. Let's get this review done. So I'm going to build this car. And one of the things that's delayed me in doing reviews is really not having time to build the 124 scale bodies. So I am going to try and do more reviews revolving around rear wheel drive drift cars that are suitable for mini Z bodies, just because it's easier for me to get a body on the car and turn it around. But in the meantime, I will be doing some 124 scale. It's just going to take me a while to get some shells ready so I can actually do a complete video review with the chassis running properly with the shell balanced and correct. So here we have the parts for the car, and you can see the gearbox actually looks like it comes ready assembled here. I just want to have a look at this. Wow, that is pretty cool. So it comes with the rear gearbox assembly together. These are alloy arms, metal arms. I like the pins on those for the height adjustment. That is really good. Let me just focus that a little bit better. So that's a spur gear there, sorry I called it the pinion. Wow, that's a neat little assembly. That's quite heavy as well. That feels quality. Okay. A tiny bit of give there. But let's not be fussy. Let's get it assembled first, see how the car handles. So this comes as a kit that you have to assemble. Lots of alloy parts standard in this kit. The arms, the front bulkhead, servo arm, the knuckles, rear arms, the rear hubs, sorry, excuse my makeshift mounts there for the body, and it looks pretty chunky and solid inside there with metal gears. So haven't taken that apart, but as it comes it is pretty good. Just to point out, these arms are my own little addition. They're actually plastic in the kit and they were perfectly adequate, but I just like the look of this silver body so much I couldn't help myself. I put these silver arms on just to make it look a bit customized straight away. So what I was going to say about the car, the smallest wheelbase you can get it to is 98mm. So you could fit a mini Z body, but I think you're looking at more the wider 98mm bodies. Anything that's not sort of a wider race body, so you're looking at more like the Audi bodies or the American muscle car bodies. They're kind of going to fit better because of the front wheel track width is quite wide. But that's usually the case of most of these drifters at a 124 scale. So this is more designed to be for a 124 scale body, really. There's no side mounts for mini Z bodies. There's no front mount option. You have to use a 124 scale body on the whole. So that means using magnetic mounts. As I didn't have any ready packed magnetic mounts, I've used these makeshift ones that I normally do. I've added a bit of glue here just so they don't stick too well, because sometimes that can be a problem when you're putting the bodies on and off. Let's have a look at the car itself, the mechanisms and how it's set up. Now, first criticism I have of this car is it does not have a direct steering drive. As you can see there, I'm going to zoom in. The steering drive itself is a servo arm, which is a metal arm they give you for this AC11S CLS A11 CLS servo. It does fit that beautifully, but it's got another linkage where it hooks onto a sliding arm mechanism on a rail. And as sliding arm rail mechanisms go, it is actually pretty locked in. It is actually locked in so it doesn't move, but it does give a little bit of give, which it's actually not bad. As it goes, it's the best one of its kind. It's not my favourite type, but in this particular instance it does work. It just adds another link to the steering mechanism, which gives more room for error and makes it a bit more fiddly to adjust. But I'll forgive it because it works. Okay, the suspension system. When I was setting this up, in the instructions it says the front springs are hard, and I've always used softer springs at the front thinking, well, this isn't going to work, and yet the suspension is very pliable and the rear springs are quite soft. Again, the settings on this car are amazing. I mean, I'll tell you, when I'm setting it up without the body on, this is one of the first cars I've had where I can make like a millimeter adjustment on the spacer and it directly translates into the driving. So for example, when I initially set it up, I was running it and it felt like there was no rear power coming out, as in, it felt like it was just sliding around very slowly at a crawl speed, enabling nice sideways movement at slow speed. The moment I turned the rear spacer down 1 millimeter each side on the rear wheels, suddenly all the power laid down straight away and had too much power. Not too much power, what I mean is it changed the driving style completely. I could feel that the motor was actually engaging and we were getting some traction. So the suspension on this car is very good. It directly translates into very usable adjustability. One of the few cars I think I've had where I've not had to turn quite a lot of work on the suspension to make a difference. In this instance, a few turns you can see a difference. Same with the front. Just by making the spacer drop down to the mil too, even a mil, you suddenly feel the steering gets, so it doesn't cause the car to carry on driving forwards despite the steering being turned. So yeah, that was pretty impressive. What else about the car? Well, the general demeanour of the car is good build quality and the parts all fit together pretty well. The instructions could have been a little bit clearer in regard to some of the ball joints, which I did mix up, but some of those were rookie mistakes. What do I think about the car itself? Yes, I mean, it looks pretty. My mess of wiring on here you're going to have to ignore for now. I haven't tidied this up yet, which I will do. I made the mistake of going straight for a censored setup. I wish I'd just gone for a normal setup because there's less wires involved and less mistakes. As you can see, I pulled a wire off here while I've been messing about. I need to resolder that. But yeah, the actual build was pretty straightforward, and the standard setup directions worked pretty well once you followed them, and it enables the car to pretty much drift out of the box, which is what you want. Once you've built it, it drifted pretty much straight away. To adjust the length of the car, there's 4 screws here and it slides pretty easily and in a satisfying manner. If I slide that all the way closed, so this gap is closed here, then that's a 98mm setup for the mini Z bodies I mentioned earlier. The electronics I've got in this car, we've got a FuryTech 5500 Hellfire censored motor with the equivalent censored speed control, these two in blue here. This is the first time using this setup, so it feels pretty smooth, but so far I haven't noticed a noticeable difference between that and the standard FuryTech I've got in my other cars. But as I said, it's been a while since I've really got back in the game, so I'll probably have to play around with that a little bit more to give you the best out of it. I'm using my NB4 controller, which interestingly I've had to do some updates on the old receivers. It's been that long since I've used them, so this one I had to update. That's a story on its own. And the general build of the car didn't take me that long. Most, the rear gearbox being built, that housing with the rear arms attached, does save you a lot of time. And I think overall this car has got a beautiful weighting in that the motor is centered. Now the only other car I had with that was the infamous, I can't remember what it's called, I blocked it from my memory, I'll put it up on the screen, the one that I had to rebuild. That had a mid-mounted motor like this, and I felt the handling was really cool, especially with turning the body when it kind of rolls side to side. You kind of feel that mid-mounted motor works really well, and it does make this car's handling very predictable. Now the old BMR-X that I ran, I didn't actually build, but the motor was front mounted. I kind of almost wish they'd carried on with that. I like the front mounted motor system. What they have changed on this compared to the old BMR-X is the wheels now use standard mini Z wheel attachments rather than the I don't even know what they're called anymore. These have the all-wheel drive attachments rather than the usual mini Z rear-wheel drive attachments you see on some of the other models. Just cut that out and start again. So the upper arms are linked to a caster adjustment, which is actually one of the best I've seen. It's got one of these hex screws, so like you'd have a wheel nut underneath here, so that completely controls that this doesn't move in an unparalleled way. You undo these nuts here and you slide this forwards and backwards in a very satisfying and controlled way. You can feel it's well engineered. You can see the nut just down there behind all my wires. I almost wish I'd shot this before I put the electronics in. I'm almost tempted to remove them just so you see a better idea of what I'm talking about. I don't know if you can see that there. See if I can get the shake out of it. That's my camera shaking. The battery size, now you can see this is an atomic battery here. It says in the instructions very clearly there's only certain batteries that will fit in here. Now that is true, and it fits in a very satisfying way. It just slides in and it's so well secure, you don't need to do anything else with it. So I think the GR Racing battery packs will fit in here as well. That said though, with some suitable use of spaces which there are in the kit, you could raise that up and fit in, a more traditional style battery which is slightly thicker. So it's doable, and I just haven't done it yet, but I will be doing it for the long term because I've got more of those batteries than these. What other things to mention? At this setup, it looks like there's not a space in this car. Now if you imagine, if you open this up by extending the chassis length to make it into say 110 millimeters, suddenly you've got all this space here to put your receiver on. It's only because I've got a smaller size car shell I'm using that it looks a bit cramped, and because I'm using a centered setup where the wires are way too long. I did try and tag them, then I had to take it off, and I've got one to solder back on. So yes, it will be tidied up. So overall, it's a neat build. It's nice and neat in terms of what it does. It does it well. Everything slots together nicely. Everything's got a place to go, and it's got a useful positioning for the gyro and the speed controller. I've left a little bit of space so it's not touching the gearbox or touching the motor, and this platform is separate so the gyro doesn't get any secondary shake. You may notice I'm using a V3 gyro, not a V4. I have got a V4 gyro, but those gyros, these modern gyros, are getting so good you can't really get the characteristics of the car if the gyro is doing all the work. And I almost have this thing where I try and, when I set the car up, I like to see how low I can have the gyro and still actually manage to control the car. And that gives me an idea of how well balanced the chassis is. The higher I have to turn the gyro to get a car to work, the more you're kind of compensating for a bad setup or a bad chassis. And I often run them initially without any gyro, although it's comical, but it still gives you a feel for how well balanced the car is. And this car is balanced well. So certainly no criticism from me in terms of the chassis itself. The cost, well, that comes down to personal preference. I'll put the prices up, compare it to the DZ3. Like I said, metal gearbox, metal bulkhead, metal front bulkhead, metal hubs, arms, knuckles. Everything is so beautiful in this car. So yeah, it was a nice first build back. Apart from a lot of rookie mistakes I made, dropping things on the floor, spending half the day looking for them. Apart from that, this was enjoyable, and now I feel ready to give it some race time on the track. So overall, this car handled pretty well with the shell on. The response from the chassis was very predictable, and I didn't have to alter the settings from what I'd already applied without the shell on to allow for its weight. The car and the chassis responded intuitively. I actually improved the handling once I applied the body shell. This shell is one I've painted, I think, about over 2 years ago now for a previous video, and recycled for this BMR-X Pro. So guys, that's all we've got time for in this review. I'll be doing more reviews soon. I'm a little bit rusty, so bear with me. If you guys could like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. And I will see you guys next time.